Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. All right, we want to welcome everybody out this evening for our Maghrib and Isha. And this evening, inshallah, we're going to have a special presentation by our brother, Al Reader, who is the North Carolina representative for CAIR. And so I'm not going to do any more introduction than that. Inshallah, we'll let Brother Al start from here. He's going to give us a presentation on knowing your civil rights. So inshallah, without any further ado, we present to you Brother Al Reader.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is, of course, start out with the very basics for everybody to be on the same page here with CAIR. CAIR is the nation's largest and oldest Muslim civil rights and advocacy group. You can basically think of us as the Muslim version of the NAACP. We do everything from civil rights work, advocacy, legal, and lobbying as well. So recently we actually had our Hill Day in DC. We met with multiple members of Congress from North Carolina, but also other folks as well from other states did with theirs as well. That was very productive, alhamdulillah, and inshallah next year we'll bring more imams from across the state to join for that as well, inshallah. In terms of civil rights and advocacy, so basically how that works for us outside of the lobbying we do with Congress and state legislatures is that if you or somebody you know in the state of North Carolina, could be everywhere from Murphy to Manio, if they have a situation where they feel that they've been discriminated against for being Muslim, so let's say your landlord says, I'm going to raise your rent on you or kick you out because you're Muslim and I don't like that, you know, it's happened. It's happened. It's shocking, but it's happened. Or let's say that your child's in school, has been bullied, and an incident happened, and now all of a sudden you have to deal with the aftermath of that. And that's happened too, you know. And let's say perhaps that your boss decides all of a sudden that he doesn't like the fact that you're praying Dhuhr on the job at your workplace, even if it's outside the parking lot. That's also happened, you know. So we've dealt with lots of those situations. So essentially what happens is that you contact me, CAIR in North Carolina, and then I help you fill out a form. It takes like 5 minutes to do. And then after that form is done, it goes to our national organization in DC, our legal team. They review it, determine either if it's a case that requires a lawsuit with lawyers, which is completely free of charge on you, and or if it is a case that does not require a lawsuit with lawyers, and then it goes back to me, and then I deal with it on the ground here in North Carolina as an advocate. So an example of that recently is I had to go to Greensboro to deal with a very sensitive case of sensitive nature of a student at a local high school in Greensboro, and I went with the father to basically everywhere and anywhere to get documentation for his child. So the school was giving us the runaround, and the police department was giving the runaround. So I literally had to go with him, and we went from point A to point B to point Z, trying to get that documentation for him. You know, so it's stuff like that that can happen. Another instance we had locally too is that in Clayton, there was a brother who got a message from his boss basically saying, you can't pray here anymore. And he said, well, why? You know, and he said, well, I don't like you doing it. And then that's a major situation. So essentially that's the general, just the stuff we handle, but also of course to do informational sessions like this. So tonight I really wanted to talk about basically with everything going on with Palestine, we have a lot of questions about, well, what can I do? What's the extent of stuff I can do legally? And what happens to me if I speak out, you know? And it's a lot more complicated than we may think, you know? So it's not very straightforward. So first part is to know your rights as an employee. Firstly, federal and state laws prohibit discrimination and retaliation. These laws provide that employees have the right to be free of retaliation for protected employment activities, such as complaining about discrimination. Employees who believe they have discrimination or retaliation claim should immediately contact the local CAIR office. There may be First Amendment protections for government employees. First Amendment generally protects the free speech of government employees if the employee is speaking as a private citizen about a matter of public concern, and the speech does not interfere with the employee's job, and of course exceptions may apply. This is very particular here to locally down here in Fort Liberty, because obviously it's a major military base area. So if of course you're in the Army, Air Force, Marines, what have you, and you decide, you know, I'm going to repost something about Palestine, you have to be very, very, very cautious about, is this in any shape or form going to be related to what my specific position is in the military, or whatever government position you may have. Because maybe, yes, you have the freedom of choice, the right to express your point of view, but that right may end if it then interferes with your work, you know. So it's just one of the things we have to consider being a public employee. The First Amendment does not protect employees from retaliation by non-government entities like private employers. Some states have laws that may protect employee from retaliation related to political activity, but not all states do. Your employment contract may impact your legal rights and remedies. Employees may have specific clauses in their employment contracts. This is why we need very close, careful with your contracts. If you ever feel like what you're about to say publicly that you may go back to your boss, be it in a news report, if you happen to be interviewed at a protest, or maybe it's for a social media post you made that your boss has access to. Before you do that, be very careful and check the clauses of your contract for any things that may specify whether or not you can or cannot do that. What the limits are. Sometimes they'll have specifications for that, especially for jobs that require like security clearance they might deal with locally here. And you can all find that through contacting your HR professional at your workplace. What to do if HR wants to talk to you about your Palestine posts. Okay, so we have, everybody's been posting about it constantly, but first and foremost, you need to document. Now this goes for anything instance that happens to you in regards to any employer, be it, or also a school. We have a lot of our youth are in the universities right now protesting at UNC Charlotte and UNC Chapel Hill. I'm sure we've all heard a lot going on with that. I've actually been in touch with a member of the community who grew up here at ICF who was involved in the protests at UNC Charlotte. So this is definitely applicable to that. If the administration or your HR department at your work contacts you about your Palestine posts, first thing you have to do is document. Document. We can't help you unless, well, we can try to help regardless, but it helps your case significantly if we have physical proof of everything that had occurred. So from point A to point B, if you can gather text, emails, what have you, even audio recordings if need be, all of that's very helpful. Of course, some states require you to ask permission for recording beforehand. To my knowledge, North Carolina is not one of those states, but I could be wrong, so don't take my word as gospel on that. But otherwise, if you have the lack of ability to have an audio recording of your meeting with said person, especially with HR, take detailed notes immediately after the meeting so you have that on file. Specifically ask you for policies that you've made violated. Now this could be stuff at the school. They have policies at the school. Specifically ask what's the wording of those policies, and specifically ask if it's at the workplace, what the policies are called, and again what the wording of the policy is as well. So provide resources. Human resources may allege your content is racist or anti-Semitic when it is not. Provide resources from grassroots and human rights organizations to defend the rights of your claim. So defend against the claim. So basically the instance of this is that you would want to go ahead and look at CAIR resources. We have plenty of press releases. Look at like Al Jazeera or even PBS NewsHour, what have you, that have all of these resources that are out there on Google that basically explain, you know, XYZ talking point that you may have expressed, why that is not anti-Semitic or racist or what have you. So have that ready for you for your defense. And of course, again, as I talked earlier, document any discrimination complaints. You have to document everything. And on the workplace specifically versus on the college campus, if you're on the workplace and you can contact HR, if you have a union, which I know North Carolina is not very common, But if you do have a union, you need to contact your union. That is key in this. If you have an access to a union, even if it's not a full-fledged union, like most instances in North Carolina we don't have, you need to contact them regardless. And of course, contact CAIR. So if it ever happens to you, please contact CAIR. So, before I continue, so I don't have any questions about anything I've discussed so far, inshallah.
Retaliation is a very strong term. You know what I mean? I don't know who's being aggressed and who's protecting themselves. How do you mean when you use that term? Retaliation.
So retaliation in terms of like the employer retaliating against you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically an employer, we've actually had instances like at UNC Charlotte where a professor was present at protests and she was fired for it. So she was fired from her job. So we've had instances where, like for instance with that man in Clayton where he was even protesting, he just wanted to pray on the workplace, and his immediate boss was threatening him to fire him, or come up with an excuse to fire him for doing so. Now, all those instances are, again, instances where you want to document, find policies, and basically cover all your bases, make sure why what you did is permissible, because you need that as your defense when the time does come, inshallah, in case. And we never want our employer or our school admins, what have you, to ever retaliate against us. We really wish that never happens, and I wish that we lived in a world that wasn't a possibility. It's unlikely. I'll be very unlikely that always happens, but as we've seen even recently, it can happen and it does happen. So we need to be prepared for those instances if and when, inshallah, it does happen. Any other questions with that? Okay.
And I still don't know who the adversary is and who is the one who is protecting themselves. You know what I mean? Who did what first and who responded negatively. That's what I assume retaliation means.
Yes, so basically, let's say you posted a social media post that your boss saw, and that was the first action that you posted an opinion on your own social media, and then, or you expressed an opinion at work, and your boss found out about that and completely separate of work, decided to cause your work life to be more difficult because of an opinion you expressed, be that a political opinion, a religious opinion, what have you. Normally those rights are protected, normally, so you need to be aware, you know, if anyone, again, we don't want that to ever happen, and it's also unlikely in this day and age that that's always going to happen in every instance. It's still a very likely possibility, and it is still a thing that does happen from time to time, so. Okay. Your free speech rights mostly don't apply at work. The First Amendment doesn't protect private employees from discipline because of speech, because the First Amendment only protects public employees like government workers. Most states have a presumption of at-will employment, meaning the employer or the worker can terminate the employment for any lawful reason, which can include speech. Speech of public employees is only protected if it meets the following factors: that it was made by a private citizen in your private capacity, it is about an issue of public concern, and it doesn't interfere with your job. So again, that would be, if you're a government employee, again, military being one of them, if your statement was made as a private citizen, not as the person employed in your position. For example, brother, as a chaplain, you can't go around saying, as a chaplain, I say X, Y, Z. You can say, as a private citizen, I say X, Y, Z. You know, so in that case, that's what would be the general gist. Which is, be very careful about this too, is that like when inevitably there'll be instances, inshallah, where news reporters will come in and say, you know, brother, as a member of the military and a religious leader, what is your opinion on X, Y, Z? What is your opinion on Gaza and everything? You have to be able to say, as a private citizen, I'll say this, but as a employee of the federal government, I have to decline on responding to this question. And again, if that statement is made, issue of public concern and that it doesn't interfere with the job. Government employees are also protected by whistleblower statutes. So if you are in a situation where you want to be a whistleblower, there are another level of rules that I'm not going into tonight, but just know that there are other rules that apply to situations that's separate of what I'm discussing at the moment. Private employee speech may be protected if it regards discrimination or is about union efforts. And of course, unions' efforts, state by state, different rules, but private employee speech is generally protected if it regards discrimination in particular. And of course, again, contact CAIR. If you ever have a situation that goes haywire, contact CAIR. So as of right now, does anyone have any questions with that? As we speaking on the college, workplace, government employees.
Is it corporate? Are you corporate?
Corporate, just the workplace in general would be corporate for that.
But I mean, are you a corporate corporation? You corporate? I mean,
Oh, so CAIR is a nonprofit.
okay, but is it a corporation?
It's not a private corporation. It's a large nonprofit, but it's not a private corporation. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yes, sir.
Well, the students say, the same thing, like my personal opinion, but it's not the university, will they do that kind of thing?
Yeah, so basically, a student generally, a student has a right to free speech as an American citizen. But the issue that we come into with the protests recently is that it's the way that free speech is expressed. And whenever a lot of the protesters have contacted me, say we need help, I say, you know what you're doing is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing what you're doing. Personally, if I were in their shoes, I'd find a different route to express those opinions. But we need somebody to express them in every way we can. But just know, if you're going to be protesting in a place where they say that they have trespassing rules and regulations, and you continue to be in that occupying that space after a person of authority at the university says, you are currently trespassing, we now give you the opportunity to leave, otherwise we will arrest you. There's really nothing legally anyone can do, because this just is what it is, I hate for that to be the case, and it's sad because there is precedent, even at UNC Chapel Hill for that matter, for people doing encampments for other issues such as the Gulf War, Vietnam War, apartheid, South Africa. All these instances have had encampments at UNC Chapel Hill, and none of those encampments have had the reaction that the encampments have had over the Gaza situation. But at the end of the day, it is the legal right of any entity who owns property to say if they don't want you at that current location, then they can tell you to leave. And if you don't comply, then that's breaking the law, And it is what it is. And we have partnered with criminal attorneys, because CAIR does not handle criminal cases unless it's a directly involving discrimination of Muslims. But we have partnered with criminal attorneys across the state of North Carolina to offer free legal assistance in these cases as well, though. So just know that is an option that people have. But in my personal capacity, not as CAIR, but in my personal capacity, I think that the protests are amazing. I just think that I wouldn't want to get arrested personally, but I just want people to be aware if they choose to do that, that is a risk they have to accept that is going to potentially happen to them.
So you're saying if it's a private employer,
Mhm.
and you're an employee working there, and you're a Muslim, and you decide you want to pray there,
Mhm.
you're saying if that employee says, I don't want you praying,
Mm-hmm.
he has the right to tell you you don't have the right to pray.
No, so that'd be discrimination in that case, because that goes against your religious beliefs. So if you have a sincerely held religious belief, and it doesn't interfere with the workplace, you have a right as a U.S. citizen to conduct that religious belief. As long as it does not interfere negatively with the workplace, and as long as it is sincerely held, if you want to pray and it's during your lunch break, you have every right to pray during your lunch break, They cannot tell you that you cannot pray, because then that's infringing upon your First Amendment rights. Now, if you were to say, I have an opinion about Trump and I want everyone to hear, that may be an instance where, okay, they may pull you aside and say, hey, you can't be saying that here at the workplace. But if you say, hey, I need to go to the back room, or I need to do what I'm having to do to go pray Zohar real quick, they have to be able to say, okay, that's fine, you do that, as long as it's like not during work hours, or if it's not infringing on your work, it only takes you 5, 10, 15 minutes to do, it's fine, it's whatever, you know. But they don't have the right to say you can't practice your religion, essentially. That's where that line kind of goes.
If you insisted on calling the Adhan out loud
Mhm.
in your workplace, then that could be something they could ask you
Mhm.
not to do.
So, open the floor for questions, and it's a little early here.
Now, you said you have to document this stuff. That means email or Gmail, which one do we use?
Anything that has a physical, physical trail,
But you could
basically.
you could use email or Gmail.
Correct. Either work, because you can reference to those emails. You can save emails and reference back to them.
But what if they don't have that equipment available? Can they write it down they have to write it down on paper, huh?
If they choose to email, that's valid. If they want to write it down on paper, that's also valid. But if it's on physical paper, just always make sure you have a copy of it. Because HR can have a copy, but you also should always have a copy yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I remember me calling. Man, he taught me with the pen, man. I'm just saying, I was just, that's a lot of work, you know, to get a little help. How much help can you give them?
How much help can the person who's the employee can help the employer?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends situation. If let's say that you are in a workplace discrimination case and you say, I want documentation that what you saw happened to me, you know? Like let's say you go to HR person and your HR person has, visual proof from them that what happened to you by your boss occurred. It would be nice if they wrote it down, and they, morally should. But forcing them to do so, I know, depending on the situation, could be a little difficult at times, but it's something that you should definitely do.
How would you help? Is it financial help, or is it just is it just for, sort of say, the class case or situation where people got money, and you help the people on the street? Do they have the same opportunity if they're employed by various subjects?
Yes, so what CAIR does is that, when you send your case in, your inquiry in, we send it to legal department, and legal department determines whether or not it is a case that can go to lawsuit or a case that cannot go to lawsuit for whatever reason. And if they determine it can go to lawsuit, then the lawyers would be attached to that case, and they will potentially do a lawsuit on your behalf with you, free of charge entirely to you. And you will potentially get, depending on the circumstances of the lawsuit, you could get financial gain from that said lawsuit.
Brother Al, I did do a quick search. You had the question about whether you can record in North Carolina. North Carolina is a one-party consent recording.
That's good to know. Thank you. So basic one-party consent, essentially saying that as long as the recorder consent, you can, in fact, do an audio recording of somebody. So if you say you want to go to into your boss or HR department with a meeting saying, I know this happened, or even if you suspect something is about to happen, it's a good thing to pull out your phone, pull out your video app or your microphone app and just put it on and put it in your pocket, and that'd be allowable.
Without letting them know you record?
Correct.
You
North
have to be a party to the conversation.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You can't just record somebody else's conversation. But if you are a party to the conversation, then you don't have to ask somebody else's permission to record. You can record your own conversation.
Pardon me, this
No,
guy
of course.
is always, he's always ahead of everybody else in the thing. He probably could have gave the speech that you're giving, but I ain't gonna bother with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to settle in.
He's legal, brother Bilal. But the thing is legal.
So, any questions regarding anything going on? We have lots of cases that we're working on, but of course we can take on more cases. I mean, Fayetteville, Upper Cape Fear region is an area that we haven't done a whole lot of outreach to quite yet, but of course, we'd love to help. Anything, if you have any instances of cases that you or somebody you know needs addressed, we're more than happy to do so. I know I spoke with the brothers earlier about potentially getting a teacher workday off or teacher workday for Cumberland County Public Schools on Eid, on the books, on the calendar. That is something we can definitely work on. I just need somebody to reach out to me who's have a collection of parents from the school district to do so. But yeah, that's the thing we work on. If you all want to do anything else, have any other cases you're interested in, just let me know. So I'm done with that.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
Since you mentioned about having time off for Eid, there's already a state law here in North Carolina that people, each religious organization or whatever, has 2 days a year. That is part of state law.
Oh, I was unaware. I know Wake
Yes.
County has set up where they have teacher workday for those days in particular. I don't know if that makes it easier or not based on what
That
the
is a
current
state law.
Mm-hmm.
And I can provide that information in writing
Mm-hmm.
to whoever needs it.
That I appreciate that.
It's been enforced now for almost 10 years.
I think the benefit that Wake County had when they instituted the teacher workday about almost 10 years ago now, is that because of the teacher workday, there's no instances of a student having to miss any days of class, even if it's an absence, they would have to miss the material instruction of the class that day. So that'd be the benefit.
When
in
you
my
talking about Brother Tolliver is actually coming here, because you know, Cumberland County is separate from the other counties, how they manage the school administration. Actually have it on a physical calendar with the administration here to say, hey, kids are allowed this specific day outside of looking at the other different counties, because like you said, it's a state law, but we don't have it on our calendar. So the kids will be able to have that specific day off for Eid.
And the school will be closed that day, basically.
The school will be closed.
Yeah.
The school will be closed versus you just taking it individually, taking the day off. Then on that day would be a scheduled holiday. Everybody would be off that day, and there would be no instruction. In this case, they use a teacher work day.
Correct,
For that
in Wake
purpose.
County.
So there's no instruction. You don't miss a test. You don't miss instruction that day.
Mhm.
So that's what he's talking about, how do we navigate it, that'll be something, inshallah, we just talked about that today, in another conversation.
There's a lot to it, but.
It's a lot to it, yes, yes. Alhamdulillah.
Well, I'm here if anyone has any questions. What time is Isha Ikama?
It should be about another 30 minutes.
30 minutes, inshallah? Okay, well.
About 9:40 now.
I'm more than happy to stick around, inshallah, if anyone has any questions. I'd love to get everybody's numbers, inshallah, and share that so that we can be in touch. If you ever need, heaven forbid, you didn't need the services. Hopefully you won't need the services, but if you do, you'll have my number, inshallah, you can contact me directly in those instances, inshallah.
And if you have your card or your information, so when we post this video on the website, you can put that out there so anybody can get in contact with you as well.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين